So since Ron DeSantis is going to announce his presidential run very shortly, he has been trying to dot his I's and cross his T's behind the scenes, try to find a way to best Donald Trump for this Republican primary. And look, it's incredibly difficult for him. It's difficult for every other Republican who is either running or wants to run because Trump just obliterates everybody with the vibes test. He's got the vibes that Republican base loves. They're still infatuated with him. And look, he's had his ups and downs, right? I mean, right after January 6th, his approval rating dropped down to like 28 or 29%. Recently, after the midterms, his approval rating dropped to a historic low as well, around 28%. But he just keeps bouncing back because this is what it is. This is how he does it. He triggers the libs endlessly. He always gets his name out there in the headlines. And, for a very tribal group of people like the Republican primary voters, they can't get enough of him. He just scratches that itch for them. So it's hard for these guys to find a way to one-up Trump. But DeSantis' way of doing that has been not only that, like, he actually wins. Trump has been responsible for like 3 election losses. All the Republicans tied to Trump got draxed, 2018, 2020, 2022. So DeSantis is like, hey, I'm a winner, right? That's one of his arguments. It's a true argument, but is it going to work? That's a separate question. But the other thing he's doing now, and this is a new trick that he started doing, he's like, what if I become a total psycho far right-winger in terms of the policy that I try to implement? And then I brag about that to our base. Certainly that'll work, right? Because this is what these people want. Well, again, if it's more about the vibes, perhaps all you're doing is implementing unpopular policy for your general election chances, right? Because the majority of the country does not want these things that he's been pushed for. So, for example, 6-week abortion ban. 6-week abortion ban. He just did that. Previously, he had said he wasn't going to do it, then he did it. Again, why? Try to outflank Trump on his right. He also signed a law that was that loosened gun regulations in Florida. I guess, with all these mass shootings, it's not the best time to do that with the whole country, looking at you. But he thinks I'll get to Trump's right on guns, right? So it's what he's doing. Well, he just did this on another issue, namely the issue of immigration. So here, the Tallahassee Democrat, this is the new bill that Ron DeSantis just signed. It requires employers to verify a new employee's employment eligibility within 3 business days after the first day the new employee begins working for pay. It requires private employers, I don't know why I keep saying employers. It requires private employers with 25 or more employees and all public agencies to use the federal E-Verify system to verify a new employee's employment eligibility starting on July 1st. So again, this is all like, hey, we're going to crack down on undocumented immigrants. That's what this is. It requires employers to fire an employee if they discover them to be a foreign national who is not authorized to work in the U.S. and makes it illegal for any person to knowingly employ, hire, recruit, or even refer either for herself or himself or on behalf of another for private or public employment within the state such a person. So there's like a chain of responsibility here too, as you can see. You can't even refer somebody who might end up being an undocumented immigrant or whatever. So this goes deep. They continue. It repeals a 2014 law allowing immigrants living in the country illegally to practice law in the state. Hospitals that accept Medicaid must ask patients if they are U.S. citizens and if they are here legally and report that data without personally identifying information to the governor quarterly and annually. It invalidates out-of-state driver's licenses issued to unauthorized immigrants. Okay, now, by the way, we're going to come back to this one. Keep that one in mind because it's sort of important. Again, invalidates out-of-state driver's licenses issued to unauthorized immigrants. Force arrested adults and juveniles with an immigration detainer to provide their DNA to the state. Makes it a 3rd-degree felony for anyone who knowingly or who reasonably should know that they are transporting immigrants who enter the country illegally into Florida. Transporting a minor is a 2nd-degree felony. So in other words, let's say you live just across the border from between Florida and Alabama. You live in the Alabama side. You pick up somebody on the Florida side who's going to help you with some construction around your home. So you pick them up in your car, you drive back over the border. That is a felony now. If that person's an undocumented immigrant, that's a felony now. Okay. They continue here. Expands the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's counterterrorism efforts to include immigration matters. It appropriates tax dollars to be used for DeSantis' unauthorized alien transport program. That's when he flew the migrants to Martha's Vineyard and stuff like that. He wanted to basically retroactively make that legal. Okay. So these are all part of his new bill to crack down on illegal immigration. Okay. Well, guess what? There's been a colossal backlash over this, and basically immigrant workers are like, hey man, if you don't want us in Florida, bet we're not going to go to Florida. So there's this going all over TikTok, by the way. There are truckers who are saying, look, I'm not going, and this is in solidarity with my Spanish brothers and sisters. Here's another one right here. This is all in Spanish, so we're not going to listen to it. Another one right here. I wanted to show you guys this video real quick. So this was floating around social media, and the argument was, hey, this is the impact that this very strict anti-immigration law is having. So many truckers are refusing to go in to Florida now that here's the result. Now, to be fair, they go on to explain in this article, it's sort of unverified as to whether or not this is directly related to the trucker boycott. But, I mean, you keep looking and you find quite a bit. So here's another one that was floating around social media. There's a lot of these.
Hello, everyone. This is an update. Today is Tuesday, May the 16th. It's not Sunday. There is my truck with grass. And this is a construction site here in Davenport, Florida, 20 miles from Orlando. And this is all you see. It's 9 a.m. Usually at this time there's a lot of people here working, all kind of contractors doing their job. Roofers, of course, a lot of noise and loud Mexican music. This is what you hear today. So it is happening. It is not fake. It is not a joke. You see one contractor there. And this is all thanks to Ron DeSantis.
So look, how much of it is real? How much of it is, not real, but promoted on social media as if, hey, there's sort of a boycott going on right now of these workers going to Florida. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to parse through and see what percentage is legit and what percentage isn't, but surely some of it is real, right? And then they go on in this article to point out, according to the Migration Policy Institute, about 21% of Florida's population is foreign-born. The Farm Workers Association of Florida, a grassroots nonprofit that advocates for social and environmental justice with farm workers, estimates that there are about 300,000 farm workers in Florida who live in the state illegally, making up about 60% of the state's farm workers. So, if you pass a law that cracks down on undocumented immigrants through a variety of different avenues, right? Well, then in turn, what you have is a boycott of some percentage of construction workers who are either undocumented immigrants themselves or they're doing it in solidarity with their undocumented immigrant brothers, sisters, parents, friends, whatever, right? Construction workers, truckers, gardeners, farm workers, right? Like, it's a little bit of a fuck around and find out type moment, right? It reminds me of, I believe it was in Alabama. There was like Alabama County that passed a very strict anti-immigration law. And basically over the course of like a week, all of the farm workers lost like all of their labor. And then they had to try to hire new people, and they did, but they weren't nearly as good at the job. And there were all these issues, and they ended up having to repeal their harsh anti-immigration law because it had such a devastating effect on the economy that they were like, okay, no mas. I cry uncle. No more. So it's a little too early to tell how far this will go vis-a-vis the new Ron DeSantis law, but it certainly doesn't look good at this moment for him. Because, you know, it's one thing for the Republican politicians to virtue signal about how anti-immigration they are, or how anti-undocumented immigration they are, or whatever. But when the rubber meets the road and you do a litany of policies to crack down on that population, if that population sort of revolts, then you start to realize just how dependent a lot of the economy is on their labor. Now, by the way, from my perspective, the way to approach this is, because a lot of the arguments that are made are like, hey, having these undocumented immigrant workers sort of undercuts the pay of legal American citizens who could get the job and should get paid more, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think the real answer is you have to find a pathway to citizenship, because most of these people that we're talking about, if not all of them, because they're workers by definition, these are people who are just hardworking people trying to create a better life for themselves and their families, and they're contributing to society. So these are people who deserve, you know, a pathway to recognition, a pathway to citizenship. And then at the same time, look, I understand if you want to say, hey, we need to have a border, right? We shouldn't have a totally open border. You can have a border, you can have a process, you can have a line, people can get in line, et cetera. I'm with that, right? Like, I'm cool with that. Have a border, have a process. Make sure you humanitarian, altruistic, and fair in your process. But you can have a border, but you can't, like, trying to do the move that he's doing here, there are consequences. And I don't know if they really thought it through to realize there could be consequences to this. And there's a lot of construction sites that are empty. There's a lot of truckers who are not going in to Florida. There's a lot of gardening that's not getting done. There's a lot of farm work that's not getting done. So you may have wanted to think about it a little bit more before you dove in just as much as you did here with all of these provisions that are anti-immigration. So again, just to reiterate, this video right here, they talk a little bit about how it's not clear that this video actually is related to the boycott, but there's a lot of these floating around TikTok, and I'm sure some of this stuff is actually real. What percentage, I don't know. We'll see what happens moving forward, but this was also that Ron DeSantis could gain some virtue signal points for the Republican primary. And by the way, I don't even think it's going to help him that much, right? Donald Trump employed countless undocumented immigrants. That was brought up when he was on the debate stage in 2016. He swatted it aside, and he ended up winning the primary and winning the presidency, right? So all this, you know, tough talk, oh, we're going to crack down on the immigrants, that has consequences, number one. Number two, apparently it's not as poignant an issue as you think it is, because the last Republican president was swimming in undocumented immigrant labor. So anyway, there you have it. More nonsense from Ron DeSantis. All right, guys. That's the show. I love you all very much, as always. Thank you, as always, for listening to my dumbass babble on a daily basis. I truly appreciate you. Everybody do me a big favor. Click like, click subscribe, leave a comment. And that's all I got, man. So listen to the full show on Spotify if you'd like. If you like listening to an audio podcast over the individual YouTube videos. Support the show on Patreon. Support Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. You can leave a tip here on YouTube. I'm very proud of the fact, as you all know, I've never talked to an advertiser before. I've never talked to an advertiser before. I am proud of that fact, and you guys make that possible. So giant thanks from the bottom of my heart to all of you who support the show on Patreon. It really means the world. And everybody who's given super chats over the years, all that stuff. So, all right, guys, I love you, and I'll talk to all of you tomorrow. Peace. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.